Ever feel like some directors are speaking a secret language? Like
Yeah.
when you're watching a film, there's this whole other level you're just not quite grasping.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone.
Mm.
Our listeners have sent in some seriously fascinating material
Oh, right.
on the language of film. We've got excerpts from Basics Filmmaking '04, The Language of Film,
Nice.
and a couple of stills that are going to make you, like, really think.
Cool.
So buckle up. We're about to get fluent in the language of cinema.
You know, what I find so fascinating about filmmaking
Mm-hmm.
is that it's not just about pointing a camera at something and hitting record. It's about taking those images, those individual frames,
Mm-hmm.
and then using them to, well, tell a story, much like an author would with words.
Okay, so instead of words and sentences, we're talking camera angles, lighting, editing choices.
Exactly.
But it's all deliberate, all in the service of crafting a narrative.
Absolutely. And, you know, just like any good storyteller,
Mm.
a director can take something familiar, like a cliche,
Right.
and use it in a way that totally subverts expectations. The textbook had a really interesting example using a wedding scene.
Ooh, weddings. Ripe with dramatic potential.
Right.
What did they come up with?
So picture this. A wedding. We've got the nervous couple, maybe some teary-eyed parents, guests milling about.
Mm-hmm.
All very standard,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
But then, subtly, the director starts to weave in these little hints of unease, maybe a discordant musical cue, or the camera lingers a beat too long on a guest who seems a little too interested in what's going on.
Okay.
And then, just when the tension is at its peak, bam,
Hmm.
the bride stabs the groom.
Now that's a wedding no one's going to forget.
Right.
But it just goes to show you can take something totally cliche and turn it on its head just by playing with the way it's presented.
Exactly. Speaking of playing with expectations,
Mm.
have you ever noticed how certain objects, certain colors in film just seem to carry extra weight? Like they mean something more.
Oh, absolutely. Like Dorothy's ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz.
Exactly. Those shoes are practically another character in the movie.
Right. It's not an accident, is it?
Not at all. That, my friend, is semiotics at work,
Semiotics.
the study of signs and symbols.
Oh.
Filmmakers use it all the time, whether they're conscious of it or not. Those ruby slippers, they're not just sparkly footwear. They represent Dorothy's journey, her power, the allure of Oz itself.
Wow, I never thought about it like that, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So when we talk about directors who are really masters of this visual language, are there any that like immediately spring to mind?
So many. But if I had to pick one, Alfred Hitchcock would be right up there.
Ah, the master of suspense.
Exactly. He really embodies auteur theory.
Which is,
The idea that a director's visual style can be so distinct it's like their fingerprint.
I like that.
Hitchcock, he planned every shot so meticulously, he knew exactly how the audience would react.
He's like a puppeteer of emotions.
Right.
That scene in Psycho with Norman Bates trying to sink the car in the swamp, I mean, the tension is just unreal.
And the way Hitchcock makes you complicit in Norman's panic.
Oh, yeah.
The slow, agonizing descent of the car, that music, it puts you right there with him.
It's true. You're practically holding your breath along with him.
Right. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's amazing what a director like Hitchcock can do with, well, basically just pointing a camera.
Right.
And speaking of powerful images, you sent over that still from the textbook, the one with the woman and the projected text.
Oh, yes.
It's incredible how much a single frame can convey.
It's true. Just looking at it, I get this feeling of intimacy, you know? Like I'm almost intruding on a private moment. And the calligraphy on her skin, the warm tones, it's all very personal.
It really draws you in.
It makes you wonder, like, what's the story behind this image? Who is she? What's she reading?
That's the beauty of film, isn't it? It's this invitation to become a participant in the story. The director provides these visual cues, these hints, but it's really our own interpretations and experiences that complete the picture.
I like that.
And, you know, those interpretations, they don't just come out of nowhere. Films tap into this whole network of, like, cultural knowledge, shared expectations, to really get their message across.
You mean like how we grow up with certain symbols and stories that have a shared meaning?
Exactly.
Is that where those narrative codes come in, the ones we talked about earlier by Roland Barthes?
Exactly. Think about the movie Seven, for example.
Yeah.
The whole film, its entire premise, revolves around the concept of the 7 deadly sins.
Right.
Now, the filmmakers, they didn't have to waste any time explaining what those sins represent because it's already so ingrained in our culture.
Right. It's like we already get it, so they can just jump right into the story.
Exactly. It's like this shorthand. this really effective way for filmmakers to convey a lot of information really quickly.
Makes sense. So it sounds like we've got the visuals, the symbolism, the cultural context. It all comes together to create the narrative.
Right.
But I'd imagine how you weave all those elements together probably differs between, say, a short film versus a feature-length film, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The length of a film definitely influences the way a story is told.
Yeah.
We've got Cheap Beans, that short film you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's a great example to look at.
Perfect. So how does a complete narrative play out when you've got, a limited runtime?
Well, in Cheap Beans, we meet this guy living kind of a solitary life.
Yeah.
And he goes to the supermarket one day to buy, well, cheap beans.
Okay. Relatable.
And that's where he sees her, the woman of his dreams.
Ooh, a meet cute. Okay, I'm hooked already.
It's a classic. But our protagonist, he's totally smitten. But he's also incredibly insecure.
Oh, no.
He gets it in his head that this woman, she's only attracted to a certain type of guy.
Oh, no, I can see where this is going.
Right.
He tries to change himself, doesn't he? To fit her idea of the perfect guy.
You got it.
Yeah.
He starts observing the other guys she interacts with, trying to mimic their style, their mannerisms,
Yeah.
the whole bit. And of course it blows up in his face in the most awkward ways possible.
Oh, this is painful. But also I've totally been there. So does he ever win her over?
Here's the twist. He leaves the store, totally defeated. But as he's walking away, he sees her with her actual boyfriend, who looks almost exactly like him before he started trying to change himself.
Oh, wow.
It's like this life lesson wrapped up in a short film. Be yourself.
I love that.
Even though he didn't get the girl, there's this sense of, hope, like he learned something valuable.
Exactly. It's still a satisfying ending.
Right.
Which is so important no matter how long the film is. You want the audience to walk away feeling like the story's been told, like it's reached a natural conclusion.
Absolutely. And Cheap Beans does that beautifully, even with a limited runtime. It really shows you can create a compelling story with a beginning, middle, and end, all within a short format.
It's true. But it must be a very different approach than with a feature film, where you have more time to let things breathe.
Oh, definitely. In a feature, you have the luxury of diving deeper into the characters, exploring subplots, really fleshing out the world.
Right.
But with a short film, you got to be economical. Every shot, every line has to count.
It's like a masterclass in efficiency.
Totally.
Okay, before we wrap up our cinematic deep dive here,
Yeah.
we have to talk about music.
Ah, yes. The unsung hero of film.
Right. Because it can make a scene so much more exciting or romantic or terrifying even. But is it actually part of the language of film? Like, it's not visual, right? It's true, you can watch a movie without the music, but it adds a whole other layer.
Right, and that's where the debate comes in. Some argue that music, it's really just an extra layer.
Okay.
It enhances the emotions that are already present in the visuals.
Right.
Like, think of it as like the icing on the cake.
Okay.
It makes it even better, but it's not the cake itself.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But then, sometimes the music just feels so essential. Like you can't imagine the scene without it. It's not just amplifying what's already there. It's adding something unique.
Exactly. And that's the other side of the coin, right?
Right.
That music isn't just an accompaniment. It's its own language within the film. Conveying emotions, even telling stories in ways that visuals just, they can't quite achieve on their own.
It's like the music is speaking directly to your soul, like bypassing all the logical parts of your brain.
It's incredibly powerful. And when it's done well, a good film score, it becomes inseparable from the movie itself. Think about some of your favorite film scores.
Oh, I know.
You can probably hum them right now, and suddenly, boom, you're right back in that world, feeling those emotions again.
That's so true. Certain soundtracks, they just stay with you long after the credits have rolled. So it's not just about finding a catchy tune. It's about finding the perfect musical partner to, elevate the entire story that's unfolding on screen.
Precisely. The melody, the instrumentation, the rhythm, all these choices, they all play a part in creating the overall impact. It's another layer of artistry.
Yeah.
And it often goes underappreciated.
It makes you realize how much thought goes into every single aspect of filmmaking. It's not just what you see, it's what you hear, what you feel, even what you already understand about the world going into it.
Well said. And it's what makes film such a rich art form to, well, dissect.
Absolutely.
It draws on so many different elements to create something that goes beyond just, simple entertainment. It really does.
It really does. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the language of film, what's the key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that film It is a language, a powerful form of communication. And it's not just about passively watching images on a screen. It's about actively engaging with them, learning their language, understand the nuances of how they're being used to tell a story.
It's like we're all students in a lifelong film school, constantly expanding our vocabulary, becoming more fluent viewers with every single film we watch.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will inspire someone listening to pick up a camera and start telling their own stories.
There you go. Now, wouldn't that be something? To our listeners, next time you find yourself captivated by a film, take a moment. Appreciate the language that's being spoken all around you. You might be surprised how much more you discover just by paying attention.